I'll start with a story. So this is a story of a couple who move into a neighborhood, and every day they open the window, and there's a couple next door who's washing their clothes. There's this lady next door who's washing the clothes and drying it, and the clothes are dirty. And they watch it day after day after day, and the wife says, "What's wrong with this woman? Why does she even bother washing the clothes? Because they're dirty." So after about 2 weeks, she wakes up and voila, the clothes are clean. She says, "My God, is it telepathy? Did she hear me say all these things?" She calls her husband and says, "Honey, have you seen it? You know, the clothes are finally clean." And the husband says, "Honey, I woke up early today and washed our windows." And the reason I love this story, it comes to, I'm going to, share with you what's been my experience. What are the 4 P's of storytelling? We have 4 P's of, marketing, right? So what are the 4 P's of storytelling? I think the first one is the point of view. I think we approach so many stories with our point of view and our biases of this is how it has to be. And we discard so many stories because it's not in the right accent, or the person doesn't look right, or they have a thick accent, or something or the other. But if we can just take our biases out and just listen to people, I think there are amazing stories just around us. The reason for me to come here and start Inc., first I brought Ted and then I started Inc. here, is that I've lived away for almost 25 years in the US. And the thing that bothered me most is that the stories about India are very narrow, outside India. It's either that, okay, very high literacy, very high this, there's the development conversation of why a lot of money needs to be pumped into India. Or the reverse of how they're taking all our jobs, there are cheap, white collar labor, blah, blah, etc. And the third one is what I call exotic stories, the largest elephants and the most beautiful snakes and when I first moved to Portland, Oregon, people I was the only Indian in the university, and I thought I've died and gone to heaven, because growing up in Hyderabad, I had uncles who would always say, "Oh, if you're only a little fair, it would have been easier to find a husband for you," or of course, my dad would hear that and give them a thrashing and throw them out of the house and tell them you're all beautiful, which I believe even to this day. Thank goodness for him. But I went there and everybody was like, "Oh, you have such beautiful complexion. We all go to tanning bars to look like you." And so there is this exotic, "Oh my God, you're from India. You must know yoga." I was like, nah, I had cut off my hair, I had a nose ring, I would be like a, punk, trying not to be Indian. But there is this exotic side of India, there was people who would walk up to me with a reverence in their eyes, and I would be telling my friend that if this guy asks me about yoga or a bindi, I'm going to punch him in the face, So when you're outside, it's like people are, "Oh, you're from India. What does this mean?" What does, it's just get me out of this exotic state kind of a thing. So these are the stories, right? How do we change it? Why does that happen? And I started thinking about it a lot, and I felt the reason is we are from a land of storytellers. We had mythologies. We've taught the world what storytelling is all about, but we forgot to tell our stories. How many people do you know who can tell a great story? You remember my grandmother, my God, I would be sitting at night, even though you're falling asleep, you just don't want to miss that story. The kind of stories our grandparents told us of some forgotten lands and princes and made up stuff was so riveting, and we just lost it because we've become a culture of very, no, it's okay, I don't want to talk about it. Or if I talk about it, I'll talk about it for 2 hours and bore everybody to death, But that art of, can I tell my story in a short time to you to get you interested enough to find out more about it? It's an art of doing it. So that takes me into the second point, is that what I'm excited about stories is I just want to have a peek into you. I don't want to know everything. I just want to know a little bit of insight into you. So when we work with people, there's so much to say, because It's a scientist who's worked all their life on something, and you're telling them in 10 minutes, tell me what you worked on. It's almost, it's blasphemy, right? But I tell them, we don't need to tell everything. Can you just tell enough that it makes a kid want to go learn everything? So we worked with a scientist in Singapore, and they have actually taken a replica of the DNA of some sea animals that have very strong teeth, and they have created a material now that will be as strong as plastic but biodegradable, and this material is already there. Now imagine if a child listens to this story, they'll start getting interested about genomics, they'll start getting interested about DNA sequencing, then they'll go do the research. But our job is, because today the attention span is very, very short, so in that little time, can I give enough that I get you interested? I don't need to tell you everything. So just give a peek into it. So after point of view and giving a peek into it comes the most important thing of, the most interesting stories are stories of potential. They're not already people who have arrived. If there are people who have arrived, you want to know about their journey. It's not about, you open the newspapers, you look at everything, they tell about, okay, this person, this is their net worth, this is the revenues, this is this is that. I'm like, that's the least interesting thing. How did you get here? How was it when you started with nothing and getting here? What were your turning points? What were your failures? What were the things that taught you? That's the most interesting thing. So we have this, she talked about a fellows program. So every year we pick 20 people who are really amazing. They're really out-of-box thinkers. They're young, but their ideas are not here yet. They're new ideas. Because what we are interested in, what's coming 20 years from now? Can we find that and prepare ourselves today? It's not about what's already here today. So there was this kid called Shivam, who was 15 years old, and he had a certain condition because of which he couldn't go out and play. So he would just sit at home. He learned how to play, computer visualization and all that, and he created a game. Now, what was interesting to me about this 14-year-old kid was, he not only created a game, he found out who are the game publishers in India, which were like 2 or 3 of them. India Games was run by my friend Vishal. He went to Bombay. He went to the front office. He left it for Vishal and kept going there every day to see if, Vishal saw it or not. And this is a kid who grew up in Patna. So he took a train from Patna with his father, came to Bombay, did this. So my friend saw it, he loved it, and he published it, and he called me and said, Lakshmi, you really talked to this kid. His just perseverance is amazing. So we met him, and he was in 9th grade at that time, and we've been working with him. He himself got himself into St. Xavier's College in Bombay, and then he said, but I don't have money to live here. Our community members got together, supported him, and he finished that. He got a full scholarship to Ashoka University, and then he was at our conference last year sitting next to somebody, and the guy gave him a full-time job to build a virtual reality department in his company, because this guy is so far ahead of anybody else in his thinking. Now the point about that is that you need to find the potential and help people when they need it. Going to hang out with a great artist today is different than supporting them when they were struggling. So supporting when they need it, find the potential in supporting when they need it, is what we really, really focus on. And the last thing is, we talked about point of view, we talk about, kind of getting a peek into their story and finding the potential. And the last thing that's the most important thing is, can we truly become partners in telling this story? It's not about just telling the story and inspiring you, because we all get inspired, we go home and life happens, right? Now, how do you turn that inspiration into action? How can you actually partner with the story so that that becomes a reality? Obviously, you can't do it with all of them. And I'll give you a small example. There's this woman called Sunita Krishnan. How many of you have heard about her? Okay, she runs an organization called Prajwala outside Hyderabad. And she is this tall. And by the time she finished talking, we all feel this tall. She's an amazing powerhouse. And she rescues women out of, sex work, and she gives them a home. And so when I first did TED, I had I curated all kinds of people from India, and she was one of the stories. And I really believe in you should tell the story with no holds barred. Let's not be nice about it. Let's tell what we are doing, you know. So the photographs she had, the numbers she had were mind numbing, you know, of what happened, what's happening around us. And people were like shocked at the end of the thing. And there were 1,000 people in the audience. Everybody has tears down, you know, down their eyes. Because the story is so real. You know, this is what we are doing. And at the end I asked her, what do you want? What do you wish you had? And she said, the point is, any place where we go to, we rent a home in a neighborhood, we put these women, they all want us vacating that neighborhood. Nobody wants us living in their neighborhood. Nobody wants these women working in their homes because they always feel that, oh, she may steal my man or, you know, whatever it is. So she said, I wish I had my own home so I'm not evacuated all the time. So we said, okay. And we asked the audience, how many of you will help? And literally like 40 people put up their hands. We told them, go outside, give all your names. Because I know what happens. The moment you go home, your inspiration is gone. You have the pocket, you have the money, but you just don't have the time to act on it. So we took all their names. I approached people like Google, etc., who I knew very well. And Google.org gave, Megan Smith, who is now the CTO of White House, was running Google.org. She gave me the largest grant Google.org has ever given. So 18 months from the time Sunita gave the talk on the stage, she has over a 10-acre campus outside Hyderabad where she has built all the homes. All the women live there. They have their creche, they have training centers. We have connected them to high-tech companies. So these women are trained into the workforce, etc. That's the power of a story and partnering with a story. And that's really what we look for, is that how do you work with people to give them a voice, you know, and get them to tell their story with their own accent, their own imperfections, their own whatever. We are not trying to make people perfect. We are not trying to teach them diction or anything. We are saying be yourself, but learn how to tell your story in 3 minutes, 30 minutes, or 10 minutes. That's the power of, because you can change things with that. So I want to just say that after all this storytelling, you know, we were talking about, you know, listening. One of the things I love is, you know, my husband is almost embarrassed to travel with me because I just start talking to whoever is sitting next to me. I want to know their whole life history. If they are single, I want to know who they want to meet. You know, would they like me to introduce them to? I mean, I'm like the most embarrassing person to travel with. So my husband says, I sit on that aisle, you sit on this aisle. You know, he doesn't want to be seen with me. So when we went to the Vatican, you know, there is this chambers where you go to confess, right? So we go in there and say, I want to confess. And he's like, what do you have to confess? I said, I don't know. I mean, we are in the Vatican and there's a confessional. You should go confess. He's like, you know, I'm going to wait outside. You just do whatever you want. So I go to the confessional. I sit down and I tell the person that, you know, I've never been. He says, it's okay, child. And then afterwards he says, are you Catholic? I said, no. He says, confessionals are only for Catholics. I said, but I'm here, you know, I mean, like, I got to get something out of this. So I said, okay, I'll just bless you. And he laughed. And then he said, I'll just bless you, but you go. Because I was like, oh, wow, I learned something today, that, you know, these confessionals are only for Catholics and these booths are in every possible language. It was fascinating for me. So the point is, we should become children, you know, and start talking to people about who are you? What do you have that is wonderful for me to know? Because everybody has something wonderful about them in their own voice. So how can we tell it in their own voice? So listening is all about not listening with my point of view, but really able to listen. You may like it, you may not like it. I mean, my son, if I tell him something, if he doesn't like it, it's like gone. If he likes it, he's there. So that's all it is. You don't have to follow on everything, but listen with no biases. So that's what I love doing, you know, all day long, is meet amazing people. And I go to scientists' offices, I have no idea what they do. I said, just explain it to me, so I can turn it into a story. You know, I talk to, you know, paleontologists, I talk to archaeologists, I talk to writers, I talk to all kinds of people, because I can't be all those things. It's my vicariously living through them to find out what do you do and how do you do it. And it's amazing to come from a point of ignorance, because you have no ego. Look, I don't know anything about it, just tell me. And you can ask the dumbest questions and it's okay, because you've declared dumb right up front. You've told them, I don't know anything, Just tell me. And it's amazing what it opens up in people. So, so I want to say that, after all the studies, all the degrees, all the things, the real knowledge comes from if we can accept that we know nothing, which is true even scientifically. We are a pale blue dot in the whole universe, and if we disappear, nobody misses. The universe just keeps going on. So if we can come from a point of ignorance and imperfection. So anytime I talk to kids, I tell them, there are two words we should remove from the lexicon of all time history of humanity, which is telling a child, be a good girl or be a good boy. By that, what we are saying is that don't ask any questions, sit where I ask you to sit, do what I ask you to do, wear the right clothes at the right time, do the right things, don't ask any questions. That's what we are saying. So if we can remove that from our lexicon and say, it's okay to be bad, it's okay to experiment, it's okay to fail, it's okay to get up and go, it's amazing what we can open up in this world. And that to me is, when we started Inc., I came here because of TED. I've been going to TED since '93 when it was a nerd conference. It was not fashionable. Nobody knew about it. There were 300 of us that were going there. And I saw it growing, and there was no Indian talk on TED at all, except the talk I did in 2006 or something of that sort. And I know for sure there are many people much more interesting than me that are of Indian origin that exist in this world. So I said it's my job to find those stories and put them on TED.com, because I could see this was going big, So we brought Pranav Mistry, Devdutt Patnaik, Sunita Krishnan, so many of them who became global icons, because we put them on the right platform at the right time. And then we felt, we need to do something in India to tell the Indian story in our own way, in our own languages, in our own imperfections. And so that's how we started Inc. And, TED was amazingly graceful to tell us that you do it, we'll help you from behind the scenes. They've been great, great supporters of us. So we have over 300 stories, close to 30 million views. So I have a specific ask of all of you. I would like you to go to inktalks.com, pick one story, whether it's of Shivam or Sunita, or it doesn't matter who. See how you can make a difference in their life. Sometimes it's just by leaving a comment, saying, I heard you. I love what you're doing. Because all these people who are doing out there, they're doing it because they love it. They get nothing for it. And so that's really what I'd like for you to do. So I want to end on saying two things. And I look at India, I've been here for the last 6 years. What excites me is the youth that we have today. And they are growing up in a world where there are less walls and there are amazing opportunities. I grew up in a world of shortages because, when I went for my IIT exam, I knew that if the next guy did well, I was not going to do well. So I don't want to help that person, So it's a mind of shortage, whereas our children are growing up in a world of abundance. It's okay, there are 100,000 engineering colleges. If not one, you'll get into another. If not here, I'll go somewhere. If not engineering, I'll do graphic design. I mean, their opportunities are aplenty now. So they are growing up in a world of abundance. And the second thing is, the whole class system with which we grew up is somewhat disintegrating, at least in certain pockets. And I think if we can disassociate ourselves with making things is low job. That's how we grew up. Anything has to be made, you gave it to some carpenter or plumber or whatever. That was not a good job. But it is proven scientifically that when you work with your hands, your brain works in a different way. So the whole maker culture has to come back, which is what we are working in the schools and colleges to get kids. You make something, you break it, you make something again, break it, just keep doing it till the right thing comes. Because that's the world we are getting into, of a creative economy, of working for 10 years, perfecting something, and then getting royalties on it for the next 100 years, it's over. So we have to constantly invent ourselves. So the first is the maker culture. And the second is, it's a quote that we live by at Inc. that says that life ought not to be measured by the number of breaths we take, but by the number of moments that take our breath away. If that is true, shouldn't we all be greedy about collecting great moments and celebrating those who create great moments for others? So we call it billionaires of moments. And that's the people we celebrate. We need to create a new measure of success. We need to have our kids look at a measure of success in a very, very different way than winning at all costs. You know, all these things of business is business, winning at all costs, only shareholder value matters, it's all gone. You know, our earth is finite and we are realizing it very quickly. So billionaires of moments, that's the second thing. And the final thing I want to say is that we talked about authenticity. You know, how do we rise above all the noise, authenticity? And one thing I found is that the other thing that rises above the noise is when you can actually work on someone else's story. When your focus is on yourself, it's difficult to be authentic sometimes, but if you can allow someone else to be the best, your authenticity comes through that. So I don't know, I mean, when I was a kid, if somebody asked me, I wanted to be an actress, I wanted to be a scientist, I wanted to be the first woman to go into space, and I was so upset Valentina Tereshkova already did it, and I still remember the name to this date. I was heartbroken that I was not going to be the first woman in space. There were so many things I wanted, and I really don't know if I'm ever going to do any of those things. But the one thing I know for sure I'm going to do is to say that I've participated in the lives of others, and that when greatness happened on stage through someone else, I was there. And I think if we can all look at just being able to say, I was there, that's it, I think that can create a great world. So it is difficult doing what we do. I mean, trust me, when we do the conference and we have to go as sponsors, they're like, what do you do? What is this experience, this story? How will I get any deals? There's no deal flow there. There's no this, there's no that. I mean, 90% of the time what we do is completely unglamorous. But something has to keep you going. You know, you got to have your own IPO, which is individual, personal, whatever, you know, your own personal IPOs. I want to end with that. What is the thing I keep thinking of? And I call it my flower girl. When I went to Sunita's home, before she could build the home, etc., I met a very beautiful young girl, about 7, 8 years old. She had a short hair, and she had a flower here, and she reminded me, because when I was a kid, I had a bobbed hair, but I wanted to put flowers, and I would put these ridiculous flowers here and go out, and my sisters would like cringe, the most unfashionable thing you could do. And there was this girl sitting with short hair and this flower, and I started talking to her. She was very shy. So I talked to Sunita later on about her, and she said she was about 6 years old when they rescued her from a brothel where she has been already raped by hundreds of men. And she was mentally challenged. So they brought her, and they felt that she's better off being in a home which was for mentally disabled children. And they put her there. And what they found a year later was that institution was trafficking her. So then they brought her back. By the time they brought her back, she was severely, down with AIDS and stuff. And so they moved into the new home. So I met her there, and literally a few days after that, she passed away. And I have her picture on my screen all the time. And I say, you know what, if I didn't do anything else in this life, if I lose my entire wealth doing what I'm doing, if I don't make a difference to anyone else, that one girl, to have had that beautiful home for one day, to have that freedom to be whoever she wanted to be, is worth everything we all do collectively together. So we all need to have that little IPO, our own IPO, that keeps us going. And I feel very hopeful in a world that we all will have our own flower girl, and we all strive to be billionaires of moments. Thank you.